Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Lakshmi Natarajan, an Indian American global executive, strategic advisor, community leader, and investor with over 20 years of experience helping Fortune 500 companies and high-growth startups define customer strategy, drive sustainable growth, and optimize operations. With a strong foundation in global enterprises, Lakshmi brings corporate rigor with agile startup execution. She's the founder and CEO of Excelador, where she advises startups and large enterprises through strategic consulting, fractional executive leadership, and growth capital. Lakshmi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, Ashley, for having me on.
Yes, it is my pleasure. For all of our listeners, Lakshmi's very impressive bio is in our show notes, but that's where I'd love to start off this episode today is by having you share more about who you are and what you do with our listeners.
Thank you, everyone. So nice to meet everyone. Lakshmi Natarajan, based currently in Miami, Florida. So I would say my career is something that you think you're defining when you start, but you recognize over the course of time that you are transforming and pivoting as you go. Even if you don't, it doesn't seem like it when you're living it. So I went to university focused on working at a big company. So I started my career in marketing at American Express. And with that experience in itself, I had different opportunities in both B2B and B2C marketing and global experiences as well. Then pivoted to management consulting with Accenture to really gain the breadth of experience across different industries. And that's exactly what Accenture is between working with a different client, a different industry, a different team, different management, colleagues, et cetera, every few months. And so what you build there is the learning agility, the ability to collaborate with so many different teams to solve a lot of different client problems with solutions. And again, thinking collaboratively through a very matrix organization. So that becomes yet another skill set. And in both of these experiences, what I always learn core are two things. It's who you're working with, whether it's your client, your team, who are you serving, right? Your customers. So those it just become intrinsic, bigger roles that you will always serve no matter what career you're in. I pivoted there from going into the healthcare industry. I worked at a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, in sales leadership. Didn't have a strong healthcare background at that juncture, but I knew how to take new products to marketplace, really inspire a team to win collaboratively. And healthcare is one of those industries that it's has been around for a long time, will continue to be around, and it's constantly transforming around us. So I really learned in that role how to be less of an executor and more of a leader, really inspiring others to lead, developing talent, and seeing everyone to their respective successes. From there, I pivoted to a startup that has since gone public named Compass. I was there when they were pretty high growth, with the path to going public as a general manager. So that encompassed all these experiences and all these functional areas into one role. And after that, over the last few years, as you mentioned, I pivoted. I took a leap of faith, didn't really have a plan. I just hit the point where it was needed to do something different, wanted to leverage my experiences and build with innovation, build something unique, and just didn't want to wake up wondering 20 years from now, what if? So I pivoted to starting my own consulting company and also became a founder of an ed tech startup myself. And those two experiences combined, just that was my world of entrepreneurship. Although the entrepreneurship was big, definitely a lot of people that I met that had been in it, it's not a journey I ever envisioned for myself. I always envisioned moving up the corporate ranks, moving from manager, director to VP to senior vice president to leadership. That's what the path was. When you're an entrepreneur, you're wearing a lot of different hats and you realize where your strengths are, your true strengths, your superpowers, and where you really need to collaborate. So I was a great sales leader, had the team was very successful. Wasn't always great at selling myself and my services. And so you recognize what you should focus on as a leader. So I initially started with consulting in big corporate. I had big clients such as Oracle, Johnson and Johnson. Then I started to go where the market was going. In turn, also building this tech startup platform, which I was generating revenue as well. But I think the consulting just started to take off. It transformed into fractional work for medium-sized businesses, didn't really know what fractional was. I think we were all learning as we go in that. And then from fractional work, started to do more founder advisory. Having been a tech founder myself for a short time, I recognize how many founders I meet. I always say, they're brilliant. They have brilliant ideas, but not all of them can take their brilliance into a scalable business. And that was where my corporate background really came into play. Obviously, having to translate Fortune 500 companies into early stage startups, but just recognizing how to cultivate and identify and build talent, how to kind of innovate around your customers to then grow that business, how to collaborate, where business and tech are in alignment, right? They can't live in silos because ultimately everything has to come together to serve your market. So
Mhm.
that really helped in founder advisory. I gained so much energy in meeting amazing founders, seeing what they're building, seeing that drive in them. They're just so inspired to make a difference in whatever industry that they're in. So I started to work across different industries, and you see a common pattern of a lot of founders want capital. It just seems to be if we had capital, we could do this. Now, I will stand by this. I don't think capital alone will ensure a scalable business that's truly game changing in the market, that's disruptive, that's serving those customers. Capital alone is just capital. I can see why it's important. And so I thought, what is this capital arena? It's not something I knew a lot about. I had met with angel investors and had been a part of different startup ecosystems. So I understood how capital worked, but I myself never saw, could I be in those shoes? It's not something I envisioned for myself. So then I entered the capital arena through a venture capital firm, then started collaborating with other family offices and other broader firms who are really looking to individuals like myself and others to find what do you see as promising investment opportunities from your lens. And so I started to hear this term used, operator. I'm like, well, I'm not really an operations person, but the concept of an operator is someone who can see a business in market and see its success.
Mhm.
That is way beyond what exists in on a term sheet. That is way beyond what exists in a data room, right? That is really being able to identify the right people to take the right businesses to the right customers. So I entered the investor ecosystem as well. Most recently, I am building a venture division for a UAE-based wealth management firm called Xanara Advisors. And it's great to be able to offer these amazing investment opportunities to traditional clients and LPs who've always focused on general public market wealth and now entering in the alternative space. So I'm saying all this advice and into what's been my journey. I would say it's non-linear paths, what I think is very relevant for the future. And it's, again, not something I walked into 25 years ago thinking I would be in, but to keeping your mind open to where the road leads. And I would say the most important thing that enables you to even do that is the community that you build, whether it's the people that you worked for, your clients, your customers, people that you attended university with, people that you meet in an event. That's all what it means to build community. I gain a lot from the nonprofit work, the board work I do in South Florida and globally. But even more, it's think of your community as what's going to enable you to not only bring value to others, but to gain value from them as well.
Yes, 100%. Oh my gosh. I love that you've had your toes dipped in like all three different buckets between having your ed tech startup and then also being a consultant and now being able to help build out this venture arm. So I think it's wonderful that you have so much experience that you're able to give to your clients because you've been in their shoes in all different capacities.
Right, absolutely. And it's the passion that drives myself, and I see it in so many others. And
Mhm.
I always encourage everyone when you meet someone, it's always time well spent.
Yes.
Investors invest in people. Yes, the technology that surrounds us can aid, help fuel our growth. And we all know it. Like, we all know that. But ultimately, it's us and how we show up that people want to see? And do we have what it takes to lead our innovation, like I said, our brilliance into a scalable business?
Hmm. Definitely. And so, what have you learned since becoming a consultant? Because that's one thing that was really interesting to me that you mentioned is that you never saw yourself as an entrepreneur, but yet here you are running your own business. And so, I'd love to hear what that has been like and what you've learned along the way.
Sure. So I think with a background in management consulting through Accenture, I understood how it works in big corporate. But it is different, to your point, to translate that into now working with founders, whether they're early stage, pre-revenue or growth stage, post-revenue, and really looking to scale. But the core tenets remain the same. Ultimately, whatever it is that they're building needs to connect to a customer because that's how you are making revenue in the business is through customers who buy, strategic partnerships. It is being able to bring your value in market. And what I found, one of the key learnings I've have is the brilliance, the product, the service, or whatever is being built. Sometimes it's being built unintentionally in a silo. It's continuing to, you're taking the foundation of a house and you're like, let me make it bigger. Let me make it a mansion. Let me add on these rooms and these features, which is all great. And you're doing it for the right reasons. But if you don't have a customer yet to even walk into the foundation of the basic house, is this what they need? Who's defining that? The market and research, of course, helps fuel that. And you need to know what the marketplace is doing. And I don't like to say the word competitors. It's really about who else is in market serving the need you are and what is it that they're doing,
Hmm.
right? Because there's enough space in this market for all of this amazing innovation to be in market. But how are you differentiating yourselves? So I often find with founders, they spend so much time building and in the environment that we're in today. And this was different a decade ago. This was probably even different 5 years ago. But even in the last few years, we see innovation accelerating into market. And in a way, I say that's good. And it's different for each industry, of course. I think certain things can go to market faster, certain industries and companies can go to market faster than others. Absolutely. But I always challenge every founder is what can you do today to bring value to a customer tomorrow? Really think about that question. Not to say, well, I need revenue to do this. I need capital, growth capital to do this and build from here. What's holding you back from bringing value tomorrow to a customer? What you have built to date, can that be implemented with a beta customer? This doesn't have to be the end product that you would want, but don't assume that that customer is coming when you have it. You need to build that momentum in advance. So that's probably one of the key learnings I've seen in like the work I do and go to market is thinking of you don't need to have this mansion with 30 bedrooms inside. Sometimes people are okay with a few and you build from there. And that's been founder learning. I think overall, from a transition from corporate, like executive to entrepreneur and building a business, I think it's just constantly, I'm like always a learner. As much as I've known and knew, I'm constantly in rooms and in environments and events and networking situations where I'm learning all the time. So I think it is at any age, you can learn and you need to learn. Because I have to say, some of the work that I have traditionally done as a management consultant, that work has shifted. And there's new areas where we need to serve our customers. May not have been what I've done before. And what I've done before is not going to take 3 months to do through technology because it can happen faster. So I think it's the always saying be a constant learner. And know that it's a ride. It doesn't come with a book of instructions like here it is. There's definitely frameworks and coaches and communities that can help fuel and accelerate success. But ultimately, it is your journey and you navigate it as you go.
Absolutely. And I love what you shared there about being a constant learner and also ensuring that what you're building is providing value to your customer or user because you might think you know what they want, but is it actually what they truly want? And so being able to ensure that's in line is so important. And sometimes it's easy lose sight of that, I think, where, when you're so passionate about the product, sometimes it's easy to veer a little bit off of what your ideal customer or
Right.
user is actually looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love your point too about just, as I shared, being a constant learner, because I think, especially as technology continues to evolve, like what worked last year won't always continue to work. So being able to make those improvements
Right.
and find changes and keep growing, especially as new competitors come out,
Right.
is something that's super important.
And it's scary what you just said, right? Like what
Mhm.
worked last year and what was the best thing and most important thing has shifted. And that scares a lot of people. And there's a generational component here potentially as well, but it depending on where you're coming from and what you're getting involved in, it's scary to know you learned all these things and now there's something new to learn. But
Yeah,
I think we forget that we have transformed as individuals over the last many decades. I think the speed of our transformation is happening faster, but it doesn't mean we haven't done it. We just need to want the agility to do it. Because if we believe we can evolve, like we just do, I always say I'm never going to be the smartest person in a room. And that's okay. I shouldn't be, right? Because the old saying, then you're in the wrong room. It's not about that.
Mhm.
It's knowing that I have value to bring to this room. I have a lot of value to gain from this room. And it's that mindset that can really help fuel the success that not only we can have, but we others around us and we can uplift each other around that.
Definitely. And that's a great tie back to the point that you made earlier about the value of community. I mean, I think that is so important right now, is just being able to have people that you can find support from and be able to get advice from, and vice versa. Like, I feel like community should always be mutually beneficial. Whatever you get, you should always find a way to give back.
Right.
But I think in tech, especially, having just a crew of people that you know you can count on is huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, since you've done so much work in consulting with helping advise startups and founders, what advice would you have for growth? Because that's a huge thing that you've mentioned on this episode, which is so important. And so, as they're getting ready to go to market and really begin growing, what have you found works well?
Yeah, growth. Growth encompasses so many things, and depending on what seat you have, you think of it differently. First, I do think founders need to invest, collaborate, bring someone on that is has growth experience, right? I know there's a lot of founders who do founder-led sales, and I admire them for that. And some maybe had come from a background of go-to-market and sales where they can, but other than that, it is invest in someone who understands growth
Mhm.
and who's had the experience before and or who has the qualities of someone who could go to market, right? Because a lot of them, they may not have yet had the experience, but they have the capability to learn. But I do think growth is something that is separate from product and they work together, of course, but it doesn't always have to be the same thing. So invest in growth. What is growth, right? In B2C, it's a very different model than B2B. And that can vary by industry. AI B2B SaaS or software companies are very different than consumer driven companies that are selling a physical product. And so the life cycle, understand that customer journey of life cycle of growth because it's very different based on which industry and which model. It is not a one size fits all. There are similarities. A customer is a customer. You have to bring value to them, but it is a different life cycle. So when I work with founders, for example, they want to target, let's say, public companies or like very large private companies. That sales cycle is a long time. One meeting is not getting like the transactions not occurring in that meeting. So think of you really have to understand the buyer cycle and who's your key customer within that large company. Is your product connected to, let's say, an example, the finance organization, but ultimately it's procurement or HR, for example, that make the decision on that. So those are multi-layer customers. So that's why it's really understanding all of those things as it relates to growth. Now, growth is just not customers. Growth could also be strategic partnerships. It's a huge opportunity, I think, for founders. And a lot of times they're like, oh, if I don't necessarily want to, quote, split the pie of revenue with others. Absolutely, it's the way to go. The partnerships fuel, it's advantageous to them, it's advantageous to you. When you gain a customer, you both win. Obviously, you need to determine the economics that make sense, but that is a whole other area of strategic partnerships, a whole other area of growth that's not often considered early on. You don't need to invest in getting that customer yourself. You can work with someone. And finally, with growth is we're in an environment, and you can chime in on this, is we think very transactionally, right? It's I grew a customer, I grew this market share, this customer left. It's very metrics driven, and it needs to be. We have analytics that tell us so many things, and we need to see what these trends mean. But I also encourage founders, when you're thinking of growing your customer base, don't think of it so transactionally. Got the customer, done, on to the next. That customer came to you. That customer has so much more value than just one transaction. How could they serve as your voice in the market? If they think what you have is great, why wouldn't they serve beyond that and maybe help you gain the next customer? Maybe talk about how your product or service has served them, can help you grow in that arena. And then also think, is it a transactional business, right? Do you want to grow with this customer, or was it a one-time deal? So never underestimate the power of the depth that could happen with a customer versus just constantly thinking of new customer growth. So I always say it's depth and breadth go hand in hand. And often with the way metrics are measured and what investors look for, it sometimes becomes more breadth of a base versus depth of the base.
100%. And what you shared there reminds me of a phrase that I've heard before, which is the idea of it being so much more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to retain the ones that you have. So to the point that you just made about not looking at your customers as transactional, but instead thinking about if there's ways that you can continue to work with them and potentially open up how much revenue you are getting from them. I think there's so much opportunity there.
Absolutely. And as an investor, those are one of the things I look for and I encourage in when I work with other investors who have different backgrounds and who are more financial driven.
Mhm.
I like to look for that in the data room and ask those questions. There's a reason that unfortunately a lot of founders do not achieve the level of success that they aspire to. I don't like to use the word fail. Like even though it's not a bad word, you know what? Failure is what helps us become successful because we know
Very
what we
true.
haven't done, what we learn from it. It's a part of our DNA. We shouldn't run from it. But it's in the sense of a startup, we don't have to say it's failure. They didn't maybe scale to their potential. And because the economics were unfavorable over time, because profitability was a way afterthought, they didn't achieve their success. And
Mhm.
so one of the things I always say to investors, and when I'm in those rooms looking through if this is a viable investment, I like to go in. I get to know the founder, the team, how they really think of the marketplace, their customers, digging deeper into the operating model that they're working in, not only asking questions about revenue. I'd like to see their thought on path to profitability. Now, not
Yeah.
every business is going to be there early. That's not the measure. Understood. But is there a path? To me, it's not about an exit. Like I know everyone asks, what's the exit? What's the exit? Yes, that's important, but it's digging in deeper on, are you thinking about how to get this to becoming a profitable business? That's huge. That
Mhm.
attracts a different layer of exit potential, right? Or different layers of investment that may come.
Mhm.
So I get in deeper, as I can say, that maybe the lens of an operator, but I do think it's important. And a lot of people do this and some don't. It just depends on what's their superpower and what they look for. This is what I look for, and it has definitely helped on making like investments that we're seeing have those higher rate of returns on some of those investments. And as an advisor to some of these companies, I'm seeing their trajectory have exponential growth. And so it is maybe that's what's going to be different. Like it's still to 2026 investment, we're seeing a big uptick in the investor ecosystem, in the investments that we're making more than we saw last year. We're seeing investors come from all different professional backgrounds, different parts of the world. And I'm seeing a lot more individuals that were not in the space now getting into it, which is amazing
Hmm.
because everyone brings a different lens and identify that. So I would say to founders, really think of like everything in totality, not just any one thing. And when an investor and or an advisor, anyone is asking you more detailed questions about the future, you may not have all the answers. Seek to them to understand like what are they thinking of that maybe you haven't thought of. So it's not you don't have to have all the answers. You need to have a viewpoint, but also there could be other paths that you may not envision. And success is what you define it. Going back to my tech startup that I have, it was in the travel education space on really working with children and raising them to be global citizens. And one of the mantras was, well, you didn't scale, so you failed. And that really didn't sit well with me because I don't think I failed. I did not necessarily achieve the revenue targets that I had projected. And there were various reasons for that. I also was wearing two hats with doing the consulting work. Like there's so many different things. But no, I didn't fail. Okay, I'm not really working on that as much anymore. It's called Travel Plus Them. It's my Instagram handle still. I I inspired others on their journey because there's been a significant amount of people that have reached out, traveling with their families or wanting to teach their children about the world at home and different things. That's success. It wasn't maybe it wasn't meant for me to take this to a major global business and becoming a major brand, but I inspired others and impacted others on their journeys, and they're now taking it forward to new heights that I did not. So that's another thing I always tell, like it's hard for founders to hear that, but it is truly on what is it that you want from this? Because not every business had to scale 10x billion dollar like unicorn. That's not everyone's path. And that too can be very successful as well because you're serving your customers and you're making the impact and inspiring others as well.
I love the reframing that you've given here about the definition about failure and success and how really both of them are super subjective. And I love what you mentioned about that, like failure isn't really a thing because there's such a positive way to look at it instead about what you did accomplish. And I think especially with social media and LinkedIn in particular, where it's like everyone's touting their accomplishments, which I love when people achieve
Right.
certain accomplishments, but it can be really hard for someone who feels like they're comparing themselves to someone and they're like, well, I haven't done as much. But so that's why I really love what you've mentioned about just that reminder of having a different perspective on it and being able to remind yourself of that instead of what you didn't reach for, like remember what you did accomplish and what you did get
Right.
to.
I think that's just, I do it too. It's like, oh, look at this person. Wow, look at that. But let's celebrate that. It's
Hmm.
there's moments just to be transparent. We're all human. We all imposter syndrome is real. I think everyone goes through it at some point. We're all making trade-offs with the best cards that we're dealt with. And in hindsight, we can always say that wasn't the best decision. That's hindsight, right? We do what we can with the decisions we're made based on our options, our circumstances, etc. Then we look around us and we're like, look at this. Wow, they're doing that. I wish I could do that. It's human nature to look around you and feel a certain way that's not always positive. I'll say that.
Yeah, definitely.
We have to call it out. It's okay. And I have failed. Like I've been, things didn't work out, or I thought I did something well and I received feedback. It wasn't as great as I thought it was. That's okay. It's a moment of self-reflection. I'm learning, right? And so it's
Yeah.
this going back to this never-ending learning journey. And so what I have gotten better at is reflecting, like
Hmm.
self-reflection first. I don't need to hear the feedback from someone else. I already have a gauge, a more realistic gauge of where I am. And when I do receive the feedback, I already had some level of awareness of it, right? I everything wasn't always rosy, but I think those feelings is normal. And
Yes.
we're human, we all should have them at some point. But what's more important to all of us is how do we get ourselves through, us, our families, our friends, our broader, communities to move forward and come back stronger and do something more, right? So leverage the setbacks as the fuel to accelerate, but
Hmm.
acknowledge it. And sometimes people need time for the motions. go for it. You should. You can't bounce back in an hour. It's okay. Take the time you need, but recognize that the path forward is awaiting you when you're ready.
Hmm.
And the energy, leverage this as energy to the next path.
Definitely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that point about taking the time that you need to just sit with it instead of pushing yourself to do the next thing. 'Cause I think that's important too, is to be able to reflect and admire what's happened so far instead of just diving in full force into the next thing and not really giving yourself the opportunity
Right.
to sit with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, since you have gotten into investing as well, I often speak with a lot of people in tech who follow a similar path, where they might have been a consultant or they might have been a tech founder themselves, and then get to the point where they decide to switch gears into investing in venture capital. And so, with that, I'd love to hear what you've learned from becoming an investor and advice that you'd give to anyone following a similar career path.
Well, thank you. I am newer to my investor journey relative to other people who may have been doing this for a long time. And so when I started last year, I had so much to learn. I knew angel investing. I was doing or some smaller, earlier phases of that. I had met with investors myself, so I understood what they were seeking. But actually becoming one is a different role. And so the what I've learned is innovation is global. And so I really seek to find that brilliance in different markets by people of different backgrounds, because they may not have the vehicle to work with like people in my circle or people I know because they're just in another part of the world and may not have access. So I really enjoy the global component of innovation and how some of these businesses are built. They can scale globally. They're not just built for a country. They're built in that vein. So I really enjoy that as well. I've also kept it more industry agnostic. Now, pros and cons to that because some people really are experts in a particular industry, but I've worked across so many with tech, with healthcare, retail, B2B and B2C businesses. So I meet with everyone. So whoever is willing to meet with me, a founder, I will always take a meeting. So I say be open to everyone because even if it's not something I'm knowledgeable, and I always say early on, I'm like, okay, this is not an industry that I know very well, but I'd love to hear you and hear and see how I can help. Because you never know someone in my community that could help them. And maybe there is an alignment there. You don't know by just seeing a pitch deck or reading someone's LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
The third thing is, I think this is open for everyone. You don't, like, I always thought you needed certain credentials or acumen or employment experience to become an investor. It's not like that anymore. You can start with angel investing. That seems to be a path that many people go on just to get into the rhythm of things and understanding what to look for, and also taking those risks when you're investing in a business. Then there's a lot of venture capital firms specifically offer like venture partner roles or incubator roles where you can come in and really get that immersion experience. So I would say it's not maybe like it once was where it was limited to a certain audience. I think there's so many communities that are global and or specific to industries and or demographic categories. You can get involved if that is something you're interested in playing a role in being an investor. And every dollar counts. Obviously, people want more money, but anything you invest is a step forward in you being part of the journey. And what I will say, one thing that surprised me in the journey, and maybe this because I started my career early on. I was in the finance space, Wall Street, like very early on. So it maybe is in my head, but it's collaborative. Of course, the level of there's always competition. That's what fuels us, right? It's like, wanting to get to that finish line, but it's collaborative in the sense of I meet a lot of people that want to work together. And I meet them at events. Now, how that happens, that takes time to determine, and it's really about how much effort you put in to people that you meet and how you're building that relationship. But I have been very impressed with the amount of collaboration that exists in the investor ecosystems I'm a part of, like Global Women in Venture Capital, just as an example. We share opportunities, we'll collaborate if there's speaking engagements we're aware of, we'll invite someone else for that. It's very collaborative, and I've connected with some of these women one-on-one, again, globally, very collaborative. Everyone's willing to talk. And that's just a trend I've seen, irrespective of that community, just in all communities, when going to an event with a lot of limited partners and or investors directly, and or people that are, finding those opportunities for them. Everyone, the only way you know how you can make like bring that magic together is if you have a conversation. And if you're bringing those things together, a great investment opportunity at a tech firm to investor directly, everyone's involved here and everyone needs to have a role. And that collaboration is what will get everything to the point of success. So I have seen, and I was impressed and surprised by the amount of collaboration that exists. But I also think it's how I am approaching the situation. I'm not you can't win alone, and I admire people who maybe have done so much and they did not have the support. I give them credit. I think the only way I can succeed is through collaboration, and that's what's worked for me and will continue to work for me.
Yes, and I so appreciate and admire that so much of your theme that you shared here is around community and relationships and people and supporting one another. Because I think really that's what it's all about, right? Is being able to uplift one another because when one person wins, we all win. And I really believe that being able to support people helps us all go far. And
Yes.
so that leads me to one of my favorite questions that I love to ask our guests is I would love for you to give a shout out to someone in tech who's doing something cool right now that you admire. It's probably very hard for you to pick just one,
Oh, this is
but
not fair. Okay. Not a fair question. Before I say the person and the company, I will say to everyone in it, like you are unique and what your brilliance that you're bringing to market is unique to you and the customers you're serving. So don't give up because if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. But I guess the shout out I want to give is to a company that I'm an advisor to. The company is called SmartBricks. They're an agentic AI platform in the real estate industry. And the founder and CEO, his name is Mohammed. And the company just secured their pre-seed round with their lead investor being one of the top VCs in the world. And why I'm giving them a shout out is because I saw them very early on when they were early phase of revenue and building and looking to for investors for their growth. And what one is they valued the experience. And I by no means am I an AI expert. There's so many people listening in this podcast who'll always know more than I do on the genius that goes beyond what you're building when it comes to AI and all the analytics. That's not me. But they valued my experience that I've built and led global teams to transformations to success through a lot of changes, through hiring and downsizing. I've done all of that. I understand go to market and customer and how that's being core. So they valued my experience and I value what they were bringing. So I joined their journey very early as an advisor. And I said, I would love to be a part of this. Here's what I know. Here's what I definitely do not know. And it's nice to see a company like that that was in the early phase, not giving it up. And in parallel, while they were raising capital, they were focused on growing customers and were continuing to grow and service their customers. And that is and some businesses can do that. Like I said, not all business and industries can go to market, specifically like healthcare, creating, things that can cure diseases. Like you can't go to market so quickly. It's a multi-year phases of trials and everything. But when it comes to go to market, if you can continue to serve your customers, it does it attract the investor community. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I thought is in parallel to capital raise they were growing their customers and continuing to grow the company with what they have, reinvesting, et cetera. So it has led to the current success that they have and definitely more to come. But it was, seeing the value, bringing on a team of advisors that can help in areas that they were not experts in at that time and continuing in parallel while you're in capital raise, growing your customer base. So shout
Yeah.
out to SmartBricks and Mohammed for that and the
Oh,
team.
yeah, that's a good one. And I love the lesson that you tied in there as well. So great shout out. But Lakshmi, this has been such a good episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show to share everything that you've done in tech throughout your career. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Sure. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope this was insightful and I welcome to hear any feedback. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm lucky to have my full name as my handle. So it's Lakshmi Natarajan, one word. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me. So I can, when we do connect, I can also know and learn more about you as well through your profile. So I look forward to seeing you there. And again, if you ever need any guidance and just want to talk about your brilliance, translating that to growing a scalable business or need any other assistance, I would love to hear from you and love to learn from you and how we can potentially maybe work together as well.
Amazing. Lakshmi, thank you so much for coming on today's episode.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for this opportunity. Thanks again.